Ashley Mailloux and Gino Buccola here with the Daily Racing Form. DRF's race of the day this Saturday is out at Santa Anita. It's race number 6 on their program. It's the Grade 2 Triple Bend at 7 furlongs on the main track. And Gino, we can't beat around the bush too much about this. It's obviously a very compact field. We're going to look at the slate here with just 4 horses set to go, but from 4 different outfits. We'll see Dr. Venkman, Happy Jack, Tahoe Sunrise, and Big City Lights square off. And honestly, I mean, it is just 4 horses, but a couple of horses here with a really live shot to win this race.
Yeah, I think what's a little bit frustrating when you handicap this race is you could see yourself playing any one of these horses in a bigger race, in a bigger field where they would be more playable odds, right? This just might be a race that's tough to play from a win end, but this is a race that's in the middle of a lot of the late exotics on Saturday. So if you're trying to play the late pick 4 and the late pick 5 at Santa Anita, you will have to have an opinion in this race and sort of take a stand somewhere. And I wouldn't be shocked to see those 3 horses all kind of take a lot of money that it looks like between Big City Lights, Dr. Venkman, and Happy Jack.
Right, Tahoe Sunrise, obviously maybe the outsider here, but hey, it's for Bob Baffert, so can never count those runners out. And just something to mention, you talked about the sequence. It's going to kick off their late pick 4 with that 50-cent minimum, races 6 through 9. So we'll take a look at the time form pace projections here for this field, and it's a little bit of an odd scenario here. You can see the LP flag attached to both the 4 Big City Lights and the 2 Happy Jack, but all in all, it's a 7-ace dash here, Gino. You look at the horses, a lot of them like to be at least close to the pace, if not really forwardly placed. So I think it's going to be certainly a rider's race come Saturday.
Absolutely. And we'll talk about these horses individually once we move past the projector. But I think a lot of times in a spot like this, when you're drawn to the outside, it sort of gives you some options, especially if you're a horse that has shown the ability to show speed and sit off horses in a small field like this. It's just not a normally run race where everyone kind of has their normal positioning. These horses will probably all be close up, kind of trying to get a good spot. So these races tend to come up a little bit strange just from a pace standpoint.
We're going to dive through this card now one by one, or I should say this race one by one in terms of these 4 horses. And we'll actually kick it off here with the number 1, Dr. Venkman, who's out of the Mark Glatt barn. And let's take a look at the most recent effort from this runner. It was out of Keeneland back in October. It was in the Perryville. It was nice to see this horse ship out of California. I always feel like that's a nice gauge, Gino, to see how horses can fare on the East Coast. And listen, he just comes up a little bit short here behind Raise Kane.
Yeah, this is a good effort. And when you go through that field, not only was Raise Kane a nice horse, but Dr. Venkman beat a horse named Post Time, who is 8 for 10 and a multiple graded stakes winner. Also a horse named Verifying in that race, who was a familiar name from last year, who's a graded stakes winner. So he's defeated some solid horses, and he's done really nothing wrong in his career. He's very close to being undefeated himself. The concern you would have is just he's coming off of a long layoff. My own counter punch to myself would be that Mark Glatt recently, when you're looking at the DRF formulator statistics, 36 for 173 off a plus 180 day layoff. That's 21%. And if you were blindly betting every one of Mark Glatt's horses off a 180 day layoff over the last 5 years, you'd have a positive. He has a $2.06 ROI off of the long layoff like that. So this is a barn that does very, very well with this type of move.
And you talk about very well. I think it's also interesting to note that his 180-day plus kind of stat is better than his barn stat. So they really are able to get these horses ready to roll. And I mentioned it with the kind of my comment there about going to Keeneland and getting outside of California. I think that's always a nice little gauge to see where these horses are at. Sometimes I feel like we doubt horses, and, kind of thinking about last weekend at Santa Anita, Adair Manor at Oaklawn in her prior start was able to prove herself, right? She was able to get outside of California and kind of handle some other conditions. So we'll see what Dr. Venkman can do 9 to 5 on the morning line. To his outside, though, is Happy Jack. And we'll take a look at his most recent performance. It was his first start off a long layoff. And I guess, unfortunately for him, he had to face the Chosen Vron, who, if you follow California racing, you got to love a horse like the Chosen Vron, who's been so tactical at a variety of distances, even surfaces at times. And Happy Jack just comes up a little bit short in the end, but a very respectable effort with a 101 buyer.
Yeah, that was his first start since July of 2023, so 10 months off, so second start off the bench now. And you see the Chosen Vron also in the running lines for Big City Lights too, so that's a good measuring stick horse. I think for fans of racing and gamblers, there was a Calbred Stakes race last week that Big City Lights scratched out of because he didn't want to face the Chosen Vron. So if we would have got like the Chosen Vron and maybe 1 or 2 of the other horses from that race and this race all put together, would have made it even a little bit stronger here. But Happy Jack, we actually remember he ran in the Derby And in the Preakness back in 2022, he was only 20-1 in the Derby, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. But it was one of those things where everybody loves to bet the names, right? So Jack got a lot of action on Derby Day. He does have the benefit of a recent race too, Ashley. So when you look at Dr. Venkman, who has not run since October, you look at Big City Lights, who hasn't run since February, you look at Tahoe Sunrise, who hasn't run since December. Happy Jack has that recency. And I think 7 furlongs feels like a really good spot for him, like a really good distance.
Yeah, I wanted to make that comment too. I think the 7 ace is perfect. His return was at the 6.5 furlong distance. And I like the way that he still carried himself in the stretch and continued to try to get to the chosen front, was unable to do so. But go to his last win down the page, 7 ace at Churchill. So just something to maybe note with him. Now we'll move to, I guess, the long shot in the field at 4-1, the 3 Tahoe Sunrise. This one trained by Bob Baffert. Juan Hernandez has the mount. And we're not going to look at the last 2 efforts. We're actually going to go back to September out at Del Mar, the shared belief going a mile. This horse was the pace setter. And at this point, maybe you think he's going to get home clear here. And he does win the race, Gino. But I think the thing that is interesting to note, it's a dead heat. And who does he dead heat with? We're
Yeah.
talking about Mr. Fisk, who obviously was a graded stakes winner once again this past weekend out at Santa Anita. Obviously, he's intriguing in the case that maybe he gets to the front in here. But, his last 2, he just hasn't been as forward.
Yeah, Mr. Fisk, since that race, has won 3 of his next 4, I think 3 graded stakes races. He's kind of turned himself into one of the better older horses out here. Fingers crossed, hopefully things go well for him. I know he had a recent surgery too, because after the race, he came up with a little bit of an injury. But Tahoe Sunrise, to me, just the hardest horse to get a feel for in this race, if I were just ranking them 1 through 4. He's coming off the turf race. He has a little bit of a layoff to deal with. Overall, I haven't just thought he was quite as good, honestly, as the other 3 horses that he faces in here. And I'm not sure if I can figure out a better trip that he's going to get than some of the others for me to upgrade him. So I'm just going to be kind of taking a wait and see approach here.
Yeah, and his last 2 wins, if you look at them, both at a mile, a different ball game, cutting back to 7 ace. And we'll round out the field here with the number 4, Big City Lights. And we'll take a look at one of his efforts. And, you're looking at this race last time out in terms of the Palos Verdes. And he got a nice trip, where I just felt like he had that target in front of him, and that's what he needed. And in the end, he's able to wear down Hopkins, who was on the lead at this point, and gets up just in time there. And that was at the 6 furlong distance, going to stretch out to 7 ace.
Yeah, I think that shows he's pretty classy, because he really didn't look like he was going to get there for a lot of that race, Ashley. And he's just super honest. I mean, you go through his form overall. He's raced 9 times. He has 5 wins. He has 4 losses when he finished second to the chosen drawn. So you can't really be hard on him for anything he's done in his entire career. I think in this particular field, just being drawn to the outside with the options that he has. We know that he has speed, but we know he actually can sit off and pass horses, like we just saw in that replay where he had to get game a little bit late. I think he just may have the most versatility in here. And then when I started going through the races overall, so he loves Santa Anita. He's 4 for 5 here with the second. And then in the fields that he beats that aren't the chosen drawn, he beats Hopkins, who's a graded stakes winner. He beats Newgate, who is a grade 1 winner and a multiple graded stakes winner. He beats earlier on in his career, Slow Down Andy, who's a multiple graded stakes winner too. So we're looking at really nice horses that he's been able to defeat just when he hasn't had to deal with the chosen Vron. So they actually scratched out of a Calbred stakes race last week that would have been for half the purse, where they would not have been favored, to come and run in this race against Open Company for double the purse, for graded stakes company, where you might be favored in this race. So I think at least they made the right decision as far as just taking a shot for more and higher upside here. So I lean to the outside, Ashley, just because I think that outside draw may give this horse an advantage when it comes to tactics in here.
I mean, you bring up a good point about him scratchy. You might look at the nominations and they might have felt like the Triple Ben was at least the spot to go for the grade 2. Obviously, just having that graded stakes try last time out that resulted in a win just against technically a little bit lesser competition. So that's Big City Lights. He's 8 to 5 on the morning line. And just as a quick reminder, this is the Saturday DRF race of the day. So you can get free formulator PPs on the DRF website. So looking at this compact field, Gino, we're just going to give our top 2 here. And we're in different directions. You use my horse underneath, but I think your speech there on Big City Lights is quite the convincing one.
Yeah, just being kind of the most proven horse in here. Of the horses in this field, he has some of the better recent form at and around this level. I think between 6 and 7 furlongs is fine. I don't think he would want to go any farther than that. Seven's probably a little bit farther than where he's at his absolute best, but I don't think it should be a problem in this small field. And I hit a couple times where I thought that he can sit off a little bit if Dr. Venkman wants to go. If for some reason Dr. Venkman can't get away quickly or wants to sit back a little bit, Big City Lights would be fine going from the outside. So yeah, probably a race where I'll just take a single or maybe one or two horses in late exotics. Probably one where I won't be playing Big City Lights at like 7 to 5 to win.
Yeah, it's tough to maybe endorse a win bet in this spot, but I went with your runner up in here, Dr. Venkman. I know he is a long way off, but as you pointed out, Mark Latt is just so strong off the long way off. I mentioned I liked that he went to Keeneland. I thought he held his own, and we'll see if he's ready to roll, though, to make his 4-year-old debut. His 2 wins that we saw early on, I just thought were visually very impressive. So I use him on top. And then I guess if you want to call it a price at 2 to 1 on the morning line, I've never called it a price in any other race, though. I did go to Happy Jack underneath, just having that race off the layoff. I thought he did the right things to finish second behind the chosen Vaughn and can maybe step up second time out there for Doug
And
O'Neill. But it's a
one
compact
more
field
point
here. Yep, go ahead.
before we finished up. I know it's not the biggest field in the world, but remember, it is the race of the day. So you can get free past performances for this one over at DRF.com and every single day for that race of the day.
Yep, you certainly can. So that's the field there for the Triple Brand. It goes as race number 6 this Saturday out at Santa Anita. Best of luck.